This is the Marketing Podcast Network.
Stories influence, teach, and inspire us. But what about the storytellers who create them? Uncorking a Story profiles storytellers to uncover how their background and life experiences influence the stories they create. We learn what motivates them, their path to success, and what fuels them to keep creating. It all starts by asking one simple question: where does your story begin? Welcome to Uncorking a Story. Now here's your host, Mike Carlin.
Hello and welcome to Uncorking a Story. I'm your host, Mike Carlin, and today I'm pleased to introduce you to best-selling author and humorist Susan Reinhardt. Susan's book, Chimes from a Cracked Southern Belle, won the Independent Publisher Book Award for Best Regional Fiction, and Tantor Media recently bought the audio rights. She joins me today to talk about her career and latest book, The Beautiful Misfits. Welcome to Uncorking a Story, Susan.
Thank you so much, Mike. I just so appreciate you having me.
Oh, Susan, I appreciate you being here, and I'm going to ask you the question I ask everybody as we begin these, which is, where does your story as an author begin?
It begins with heartbreak, Mike. It began when I was probably 13, and of course, I was in love with a boy who didn't know I existed. So I would retreat to my parents' attic with a red notebook and pen the most horrific angst poetry, woebegone poetry you've ever read. That's where the journey began.
Well, a lot of wonderful things do come from heartbreak, unfortunately.
I haven't found one yet.
Well, you are a best-selling published author, so I think that counts.
Well, thank you.
Well, tell me, when did you start writing more longer form things, other than poetry?
Okay, well, the first thing I wrote after the poetry was a play in high school, and it was pretty crappy too. But I started writing short stories when I was a teenager, and then it grew to the point that I wanted to study journalism. I went to the University of Georgia, go Dogs, national championships twice. And so I was going to study journalism, and my dad, I think he'd had a bourbon or two. He said, "Oh, Susan, I don't think you ought to do that. That's an iffy career, writing. I believe you ought to be a nurse because you'll always have a job. And if you get fat, I don't know." He always would say if we got fat, we wouldn't have a husband. Not that I wanted one at that time anyway, but he just suggested that I go to nursing school. And so, Mike, I did for 2 years, and it was not for me. I got too attached to the patients, and I just decided I'm not going to listen to my dad. I'm 19. So I changed to journalism and then began a career in newspapers and magazines as a syndicated humor and human interest columnist.
So why humor and human interest?
Well, I'm from Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina. So we're just from a whole family of storytellers. My dad's written a couple of books, and I loved Louis Grizzard and Irma Bombeck. And sometimes I think I'm funny. So, I wrote 2 humor books that were bestsellers before I started writing novels. And that's sort of how the jump went. I've been out of the newspaper business for about 8 years and mostly just focused on writing books, novels.
Well, tell me about that first book you wrote, that first humor book that became a bestseller.
So it was called Not Tonight, Honey, Wait Till I'm a Size 6. And I had an agent, a great agent in New York, and he got us a 3-book deal, but that one did the best. I was able to get a divorce, a house, and a breast lift and reduction with that book. So that's why I call it a bestseller. And it was humorous essays.
Yeah.
Of course, exaggerated, but short stories that were funny.
But it seems like it did something positive in your life.
It absolutely did. It led me to my second and final and wonderful husband. and it reduced the size of my breath.
You got a reduction with that one?
Oh yeah, and a house though.
Yeah. Well, very good. Talk to me about sort of the differences between, writing nonfiction and writing fiction, and kind of moving to writing fiction.
Well, fiction was my dream, probably since college, and I read The Handmaid's Tale, and I used to read Ann Tyler's wonderful novels. I think she's from Baltimore, and I just knew that I wanted to write books, and I wanted to write about serious topics, but not have it be so depressing that you felt like you'd been gutted like a fish. So I sent my novel. I can't remember. It was the predecessor for Chimes from a Cracked Southern Belle, my debut novel. I sent it to my agent. He shopped it. We got glowing rejections, but I didn't get a bite on it at that time. And so he suggested that I write humor books, and I did. And after 3 or 4 of those, I went back to the Chimes Southern Belle manuscript and rewrote it and then got it published.
Do you feel like that book was too soon to write that book, or you didn't? I don't want to say you didn't know enough, but did you need that experience of writing the humor before you could turn back to writing fiction?
I'm not sure, because I do put a lot of humor in my fiction, but at the time that those books came out, it was during the big recession in 2007, 6, 7, and 2008. And it was easier. It was easier for my agent to sell nonfiction at that time than fiction.
Yeah. I mean, certainly a period of time where we all could have used some laughs.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe that was his nice way of saying that my book just wasn't ready for prime time, and try something else.
Well, I talked to a lot of authors who, write, 2 or 3 manuscripts before they get one that's, gets the attention or interest of an agent, let alone a publisher. And then sometimes they go back, after they've had some more life experiences, they've learned a few things about publishing, and they go back and revisit those manuscripts, which sounds like that was what happened to you as well.
It did. And you're so right about that. A lot of my author friends do the same. Some keep them in that quote drawer forever and never let them see another moment of light. But right now I have, Mike, I have 4 manuscripts that are in various stages of edits and completion. 2 are complete. Of course, you always, as an author, you find yourself not really complete. I mean, I could edit for years if somebody didn't say, stop rewriting, just let it go. But interestingly, my very first book I ever wrote was called Swimming in the Sky, and it was a young adult novel set in the 70s in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and it's still in my drawer. And Mike, I'm going to dig it out. I keep saying, it has promise. I'm just going to see what I can do with it.
Sure. Well, what can you share with us about the Beautiful Misfits?
The Beautiful Misfits is a story of hope and heartbreak, and of course humor. I had a son who had problems with addictions, mainly alcohol, but he's now 30. He's clean and sober, but a lot of his friends, I mean, they were overdosing from the opioid epidemic. The pills on the streets, the Xanax, the Percocet, the Oxy that they would buy was laced with fentanyl, and several of them died. I mean, my son carried Narcan on him because a couple of his friends were addicts to that. Now, I was fortunate that my son was not in the opioids because he was afraid. but the alcohol was devastating. So I didn't want the book to be depressing. And I had taken a job as a makeup artist for Lancome Cosmetics. So I was a regional makeup artist, and I saw everything at those mall makeup counters. I mean, the funniest stories would happen there. And I thought, I'm going to write about a mother of an opioid epidemic, but I'm going to have her be a makeup artist in a local mall. And so that adds levity, it adds humor to release the pressure valve of the serious topic, but one we should be talking about.
I mean, it is sort of hard to make light of it, but on the other hand, humor might be healing.
Well, it was, and
yeah.
I didn't use flippant slapstick humor. I sort of just let the humor become like a character. I would use character traits to offset the hardline topic, and so the book is not really light. It's pretty serious, but I would call it book club fiction. And Mike, when I read a serious novel, I still want to laugh. I don't want to walk away feeling like I need to just take to the bed. I just want to give me a laugh, make it heartbreaking, make it riveting and life-changing, but please throw in something that lightens the mood.
Well, it's the author's superpower, which is the ability to move a reader with emotion. And I don't think, even a book that is a thriller can also have humor in it. I think Dean Koontz does that very well. Even though he's writing about some dark stuff and you're kind of on the edge of your seat, there's always like some comedic relief in there, because if you don't release the tension for the reader somehow, the reader, is kind of maybe left in an emotional state that they don't want to be in.
Right. I mean, I love the author who wrote Lessons in Chemistry. It was a pretty dark book, but it used a lot of humor. Have you heard of that one, Mike?
I've not, no.
Or Eleanor, you've probably heard of Eleanor Oliphant is Just Fine. And that was another great one that took a quirky sort of character that was dealing with being on the autism spectrum disorder and just made it really enjoyable because of the humorous parts.
Yeah.
So that's what I strive to do.
Yeah, no, that's one of my daughter's favorite books, actually. She just yeah, one of those, Reese Witherspoon book club books, but
exactly. Yep. So, well, you write books too, don't you, Mike?
I do write books. I write in the sort of the humorous mystery type vein for the most part. I've written a couple of just straight up comedies, but for the most part it's like these quirky humorous mysteries where it's I try and balance. My writing hero is Carl Hyacin, and
love Carl. Yes.
I kind of use him as my North Star. So I try and create, like kind of really over the top, colorful villains and, quirky, snarky, sarcastic heroes.
That sounds like absolutely something I would love to read.
Well, I will plug my books for you offline, so we don't bore the audience. So we don't bore my audience, because this is about you. It's not about me.
I know, but let me ask you this, because I used to be an interviewer myself as a reporter. How many manuscripts do you have in your drawer gathering dust?
This just came up on an episode earlier today. I have three that are gathering dust.
Okay.
One of those I have used and put into another novel. So it was, I took elements of it, sort of the core pieces of that one, and I did put into, I repurposed it into another novel.
I think that's very common. I do that too.
Yeah, because there were
never throw anything pretty decent away, because It can always be recycled or expanded upon.
Oh, I totally agree. I totally agree. Like
Right.
I didn't think like, when I analyzed that manuscript, I'm like, it's good, but it's missing something, and I might be able to use this in another way. And then years later, I came up with this idea, and it just worked in a different novel.
Exactly. Things like that come to me when I'm on the edge of sleep.
Right.
Not quite asleep, not quite awake. And then I have these wonderful ideas and I jot them down in my phone in the notes in the iPhone. And then when I wake up, they're horrible. It's like, oh gosh, no, that would never work.
Did you? That happens all the time, and I do the same thing with the Notes app on my phone. And I'll look at it in the morning. I'll be like, "What was I thinking?"
I know. And these are sober times too. I mean, it's sad when your sober thoughts are just not as brilliant as you thought.
Well, that's true. That's true. But there is something about that middle of the night thought that you think is so great. Maybe it's
Right.
because you have maybe nothing else on your mind and it's the only thing you're thinking of. My problem is sometimes those thoughts keep me up at night, but then in the morning they don't pay off.
They don't. Well, every now and then, I'd say about 10% of them, in my experience, turn out to be worthwhile. So it's a little bit productive.
I used to, drive. We have triplets. They're almost 21 years old.
Oh my gosh.
But I would drive them to school in the morning. And if I was writing something, I would sometimes ask them. And if a thought came to me when I'm driving, because thoughts come to me often when I'm driving, I would have them,
Right.
I'd be like, hey, Patrick, can you text me, such and such? And it'll be some like really wacky thing, like killer has knife, but blah, blah, blah. And
Oh my gosh.
he'd be like, I don't know why I'm doing this. This makes no sense, but okay. And so they were used to like these really random requests for me when I'm driving. But
Do they read your books? Because my children pretend like they read mine, but I don't know that they really do.
I've written 8, and no one in my house has read. Certainly, no one has read all of them. Some of them have read one of them.
Hey, well, that's pretty good to get a 21-year-old to read. I wish more people were readers. I read somewhere that only about 40% or less than the whole population reads books.
No, we must have done something right because all 3 of them, we have 2 girls and a boy. They are all avid readers. So
That's excellent.
we did something right along the
Yes,
way.
you did.
Along the way. Yeah, my daughter, one of them is in Cancun right now, and I'm sure she has 3 books with her.
Well, and I think when I think of Cancun, I go back in the day to the first husband. So it's sort of a blighted memory for me.
Well,
But young people will have fun in Cancun. It is a fun place.
yeah, apologies for bringing up bad memories, but
No worries. I think I'm over it. It's been 20 years.
well, yeah, there you go. There you
Yeah.
go.
Oh, I'm dating myself.
So now that you've had success as a writer, first of all, is your father still around?
He is. He's fantastic. He's 87 and I believe he's really happy now that I'm not a nurse. And
I was going to say,
he,
what was his take on your career pivot from nursing to journalism and now being an author?
my dad, he and I are pretty opposite, but he made peace with the fact that I'm a free spirit. So he's been very supportive. He was a businessman in corporate America. And then when he retired, he decided he'd do a little preaching on the side. So when he teaches Sunday school or fills in for the pastor as the preacher, and I have a book coming out, he'll actually promote them. I call it hawking. He'll hawk my books and then he'll tell the congregation, he'll say, now my daughter, she uses some colorful language, so be prepared. And if you read this, you might have to go to altar call. But they, but they buy them. Baptist aren't as innocent as you think they are. They just ask for forgiveness a lot.
That's right. Well, I think we Catholics can say the same thing.
Right.
One of the ways I'd like to get to know my guests a little bit more is by diving into pop culture a little bit. So I'm curious, Susan, when you were growing up, what were some of your favorite things to watch on TV?
Oh gosh, this is going to make me sound like I'm 100 years old. I liked Gilligan's Island. I Dream of Jeannie. The Wonderful World of Disney would have movies when I was growing up.
Oh, yeah.
We only had three channels, and no cell phones, just your regular. Well, the princess phone came into be, the little pink princess phone.
Sure,
But
sure.
my big thing, more than television, was music, and I was madly, madly in love with Peter Frampton, and was sort of a groupie for a little while. You probably don't know who he is.
Oh, I not only do I know who he is, I saw him live about 15 years ago. He came through. I live in Stamford, Connecticut. He came to the Palace Theater. I saw him, and he was fantastic.
Yes, and you remember the double album that he had, Frampton Comes Alive, with the long curly hair. He was right up my alley, Mike.
Well, he did not have that long curly hair when I saw him.
No, and I got to interview him over the telephone when I was working as a newspaper writer, so that was sort of a thrill.
Oh, that's
But
cool.
I would say growing up, I really loved Frampton and the Eagles. I still go see the Eagles concerts. They're wonderful.
Oh, even without Glenn Fry?
Right, because his son is singing, and he's pretty good. He's filling in for him.
They've got Deacon is his son's name, right? And then
yes.
Who is it? Also that's in the band now.
Don Henley.
Yeah, well, you got Don Henley, of course. Joe Walsh.
Oh wait, the country guy.
Yes, yeah. Who is it? It'll come to me when I'm not thinking about it, because he's the one who's actually responsible for getting them back together to do that Hell Freezes Over album like 20 years ago.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he had them in one of his music videos, and then they were all on the set of the video, and then that's what got them to start talking again, and why they named their album Hell Freezes Over, because they got back together after Hell Froze Over.
Oh, that's great. It isn't Chris Stapleton, is it?
No, it's not Chris Stapleton.
Tim McGraw.
No, not Tim McGraw either. It'll come to me in a moment.
Yes,
Vince Gill.
have adult
Vince
children.
Gill. Vince Gill.
That's it. Yay!
Yeah.
You did it.
I did. Well,
So
I prayed to Our Lady of Google, and she gave me the answer.
I see what you did. You cheated.
Of course.
We're actually going to see the Eagles. We've seen them maybe 4 or 5 times, but we're going again in April because they're going to be in the South for a little
very
tour.
Good.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, you read my mind, because my next question was, what were you listening to growing up? And you already told me.
A lot of Jackson Browne. Leonard Skinner was the first concert I ever went to, and just I was a rock and roll girl. But Mike, when I went to college at the University of Georgia, REM and the B-52s were just starting to really rise in popularity, so we got to see them free. And one of the guys in REM, not Michael Stipe, but he was in one of my magazine writing classes, and we used to swap manuscripts. We would swap our magazine stories, and he marked mine up with so much red pen. I was devastated.
Was it Peter Buck?
No, I can't. It was Roger. It was Roger something.
Okay.
With a D. I know it was Roger with a D, but I'm not sure. He might have been their manager.
Okay, sure.
But we would ride by their house, and they had a yard full of those plastic pink flamingos. There must have been 100 of them. And
oh, wow.
They dressed them in clothes and pearls and beads. It was pretty funny. Those were the days.
Those were the days. What about favorite movies? Any favorite movies that you have?
Well, I liked what was it? The Holiday. It was a swap movie with
Oh, sure. Yeah.
with
Who was in that? Jack Black may have
Cameron.
been in that. Cameron Diaz, Jack
Yes,
Black.
right. That was so good. And we just started watching Daisy Jones and the Six on Netflix.
Oh, my daughter loved that book.
It was a great book by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and so we've watched 3 of those. I watch a lot of Netflix. My favorite show ever, a lot of people have never heard of it, is Wentworth. It's Australian, and it's set at a women's prison in Australia, and it sounds like a duplicate of Orange is the New Black, but it is so much better. The acting and the writing is phenomenal.
No, I'll have to put that on my list. I'm always looking for good things to watch.
Yes, I haven't been to the movies since probably COVID.
Hmm.
I just sit on my couch with my blanket and watch I just stream stuff.
Sure. Just, I know you mentioned Gilligan's Island before, and I'm just curious as to your take on this. The professor could make a radio out of coconuts and an exercise bike, but he couldn't, patch up the boat so they can get back to, wherever they took that 3-hour tour from. Does that not strike you as odd?
I never thought of it. I probably didn't think of the show as deeply as you did, so it makes perfect sense. That's a big flaw. That's a huge flaw in the plot.
I will overanalyze everything.
Good job solving that. And when you figure out the meaning of I Dream of Jeannie and that sort of thing, you just let me know. You're probably younger than I am.
Believe me, Larry Hagman, Barbara Eden. I know that show very well.
Yes. And I'm sure there were other shows growing up, like The Partridge Family and Love Boat, and all of those.
There's nothing wrong with Love Boat. I watch Love Boat to this day.
Oh yeah, I didn't know. I still watch Sanford and Son and Mary Tyler Moore. Just the classics.
Sure. They don't make TV like that anymore, that's for sure.
No, but if you watch the old shows and they've not been digitized, they're blurry.
Yeah, they are.
We had poor quality film growing up.
We sure did.
So,
but we all survived.
Yes, we did. Mostly I like to read though at night. I love to read other writers in different genres. So even though I write book club women's fiction, I'll read mystery or thriller. I've started to and it might be an age thing, but I've started to get into true crime. I'm a little worried about where my mind is going.
Any favorite true crime that you're reading now?
Well, I'm watching it. I'm cheating.
Oh,
probably
okay.
The Murdaugh,
I just started watching that on Netflix.
Yes. Well, my second cousin lives on property adjacent to Moselle where it all happened. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah. So I've been into that, but lately it's just been this book stuff. And, while I love getting out and marketing, I'm a little bit of an introvert, and I'd rather be upstairs in my little hidey hole writing other books than going out in person. Have you ever promoted a book of yours?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I used to do, we have a Barnes and Noble here in town that, will let me do book signings. And there's a great bookstore up on Cape Cod where we vacation that I've done some signings, but a lot of it in like this day and age, it's mostly done virtually, through Zoom, and I'll join book clubs, like local book clubs, if they're reading something I've written.
I love that idea.
That's fun. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Great way to build, connection with your readers as well.
Well, obviously, if I don't get my technical abilities straightened out, I won't be able to Zoom with book clubs.
Well, let's just assume today could have been a fluke.
Maybe so. Maybe it was meant to be that I wasn't on the camera.
Well, you certainly were camera ready. I'll say that.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
What about in terms of, lessons you've learned along the way going through your writing career, starting with, writing a manuscript, then pivoting to fiction. I'm pivoting to sort of humor and then going back to fiction. What are some big takeaways you have that you would, that you would maybe share with an aspiring author?
Certainly. First, I think the general rule is, and rules are meant to be broken, is it is easier to break into the craft if you write nonfiction. I've heard other authors say that because there's a huge market for nonfiction, and a lot of the fiction that's really, really popular today is by the same small number of authors, like your Colleen Hoovers and Ann Tyler and Dean Koontz and Danielle Steele. Those are the ones that are consistently on the bestseller list and crowding the market. That doesn't mean you should give up and just, write a cookbook or something, but it is a good way to break in. If you don't want to do that and you want to write fiction, you just better have like an armadillo shell that just ensconces your entire body, because a lot of would-be aspiring writers, they absolutely give up the first 10 rejections they get. Some even sooner, Mike. But I mean, since I started in my 20s, I would hate to even count the number of rejections I have. And there have been successes too, but it is a daunting, as you know, heartbreaking business where you can't take anything personally.
Oh, you have to be persistent.
Yes.
And have a thick skin, because you're right. It is at first, and even, a while, even into your writing career, having, maybe one or two publications under your belt, that's no guarantee that another agent or your existing agent is going to, be into your new idea.
You're absolutely right. I had two of the best literary agents. One was Ethan Ellenberg. I don't mind sharing. The other was Holly Root, who is the agent for, the duo team, Christina Lauren, a lot of other, I think maybe even Taylor Jenkins Reid is with Holly's literary agent. But after I parted with Ethan during that bad recession, I just focused on my newspaper career, and I took about 10 years off writing. So now, and this is hard, as an author who had some success, and now I'm older and I'm trying to get a literary agent. I'm not trying lately, but I did try, and I got pretty close. I got a lot of rejections, and this is something other authors need to know. You absolutely don't need a literary agent. I had offers on the Beautiful Misfits from lots of publishers. And I decided to go with Regal House because they're in North Carolina, and they have some wonderful, wonderful books and authors, just phenomenal literary works. I'm a little shocked that they took on my commercial fiction. So yeah, don't skip the smaller traditional publishers. A lot of authors are doing hybrid too, but that's a little costly.
Oh, sure. And I just was talking to somebody earlier today who had a tremendous amount of success writing just for Kindle Vella. Are you familiar with Kindle Vella?
I have heard of it. And is it just the ebook novellas, or?
Yeah, it's basically it's definitely ebook, and then what you do is you write basically short scenes. And you kind of like publish, scene by scene, maybe anywhere between maybe 2,000 to 5,000 words. And you just publish them regularly. And this particular author had such a big following doing that, it led her to a traditional publishing deal. So there are so many different ways of getting published now, and there's a lot of disruption within publishing.
You're absolutely right. And, some people just think, if I don't have a literary agent, that's it. I'm giving up. I'm quitting. And to them, I say, don't. Your book can get if you go for the big five, it shrinks every year. In a few years, it's going to be the big two publishers.
Right.
That doesn't necessarily mean that your book is going to stand out any more than if you went with a reputable small publisher.
Yeah.
I mean, even the big companies now, they don't have the marketing budgets that they used to.
Yeah, I agree. Even if you're published by, Penguin Random House, you're still doing your own marketing for the most part.
Exactly. So I don't know. My biggest advice is what you said, circling back. I mean, you can't give up. And that's what happens to so many. I mean, you can take a good beating with the rejections and the heartbreak that comes from it, but that just makes the little glimmers of, positives that come our way just feel that much better. It's like, a treat that rarely comes, or I guess for some authors, it's instantaneous success, but for the vast majority of us, it's a slow process, but it can be very rewarding.
Yeah, that's very true. It strikes me you've worn a few different hats in terms of you tried your hand at nursing, then journalism, an author. You mentioned something about, being a regional makeup artist for, who is it, Lancome?
Yes. That was the most fun job ever.
Well, I'm sure the people watching was pretty amazing there.
It was. And you know what I think I'm going to do? I might run a contest. You know how you do giveaways when you're doing promotions? I'm thinking about running a contest where I give away 3 makeovers and I just fix people up. Just give them a free book and a makeover.
What I'm curious about, though, is there a career that you'd want to try that, you haven't tried so far?
Yes, I would love to be a dolphin trainer.
Now, tell me more about that, because that's a unique response.
Well, I've always, I thought I was going to go into marine biology, and I'm obsessed with sea life. I used to live at St. John when I was younger in the U.S. Virgin Islands, and I go there every year, and I just love being under the water because I think the world below us is so much more serene than what's above us. And for my 60th birthday, which was very, very recent, I went to Alma where they filmed Bloodlines, another great show, plug for Bloodlines. And I paid and swam for about an hour with a bunch of dolphins. And I watched the trainers, and I even ordered a book, How to Be a Dolphin Trainer, because one of my newest books that's in a mid stage of edits, the character is a dolphin trainer.
Oh, how cool.
Now, I mean, if I could be anything and have the talent to do it, it would be an ice skater. But I can't ice skate at all.
Well, that makes 2 of us. I mean, I can ice skate, but certainly I could stand up and I could go forward, but that's about it. Going backward is not happening.
Now, I'm going to guess, Mike, what your dream career would be.
Oh, I'd love it. Yes.
Okay, let me guess. You would be probably the lead singer and guitarist for a rock band.
Well, I'll tell you, I do have some guitars behind me. That does not mean I can play them very well.
Well, at least you have them, that. What is it my friend calls that? Our fantasy selves.
True. Very true. Very true. Now, my singing ability is not there.
Well, I certainly can't sing either. And I'm really hoarse today because we've been cheering for Carolina Duke. Yep.
Well, who are you going for, North Carolina or Duke?
Oh, don't say Duke. Carolina.
Hey, look, I'm a UConn fan, and I remember what Duke did to us in the Christian Laettner days. So
right.
I'm no fan of Duke, and I will say this. University of Connecticut Huskies beat Duke in the NCAA finals 1999. And so
Excellent.
I'm very happy. And of course, North Carolina, you've got Michael Jordan as a great alum.
You do. And my husband played basketball with him. My husband went to Carolina and played basketball for 2 years.
Oh, no kidding. That's fantastic.
Yep. That's why I'm a huge fan. But the Bulldogs, they're my team.
Well, they're your team. And they certainly had a couple of good years, right?
Right.
What I know we talked about sort of advice you would give, an aspiring author, but what I'm really curious about, Susan, is if you could go back in time and whisper some words of advice into your younger self, what are some things you would tell the younger Susan?
Don't party so much in college. Don't go to nursing school. Start reading more books earlier. You never need a man. Be your own person, and just be confident in who you are. Look for your strengths and not your flaws. I tend to look at all of my flaws. So, just love yourself. Give yourself room to laugh and to make mistakes. And
Yes.
not hold yourself like, oh my God, my past. I'm such a horrible person. Get over it.
Yeah, it's so, I ask that question to everybody I talk to, and there is always some element of be kinder to yourself. That typically comes up.
Especially when you're a teenager. We're so... Oh, I would tell myself not to join a sorority as well, because I did join one, and for the most part, it was not a fit.
My one of my girls had the same experience. So she was a member of, big, one of the biggest national sororities, and this is her junior year. She became a member as a freshman. And
Right.
she just came to us and she's like, I think I'm gonna drop. And I said to her, you've got one more year left. You've got one more really, because the whole recruitment thing really gets her down. She doesn't like that.
No, because you're cruel to other girls who are trying to get in the sorority. You judge what they do, what their parents do for a living, what kind of car they drive, what they're wearing, how they look. It's very superficial.
And she gave me like a little inside baseball about how it all goes down. And they all get lists, the summer before, the fall of, when prospective new members are entering, and they look at these, young women on social media. They make a short list of who they want. And then through the recruitment process, there's all this rating and voting.
It's terrible.
It's so not my daughter. Like, she is so friendly and open to everybody, and she's like, look, I joined and I thought it was going to be more. She doesn't really know most of the girls in her chapter. Her best friends in the world are her roommates who are not in the sorority, and
she was probably in the same one I was in. It sounds so similar, but I hate to throw them under the bus.
Well, we won't say it on the podcast. Neither one of us needs to get
we should
sued.
say what the first letter starts with.
Okay, I'll say it. Alpha.
Try.
Okay. Okay.
But, I think people can figure that out. I always wanted to write a novel about it. And then one of my author friends, she wrote a fabulous book. We have the same agent, Holly Root, and she wrote Rush. Get your daughter to pick up a copy of Rush.
Oh yeah, I think I've heard of Rush.
Yes, it's all about the sorority system in, I think it's set in Alabama or Mississippi.
Well, I know. My daughter's in a northern school, and I know there's a huge difference between, southern schools and northern schools with the Greek system, but
it sounds pretty similar.
Yeah.
So maybe she'll write a book about it. There's so many books I want to write, but I'm running out of time, and I'm a huge procrastinator. Oh, I would tell other writers, don't say that you're going to make time. You hear it over and over, but you absolutely have to make time. When I was working as a news reporter and a feature writer and columnist, I wanted more than anything to write that first book, Not Tonight, Honey. And I would get off work do the whole thing, the dinner, the sports stuff, the homework with my kids. And about midnight till 2 in the morning, I made a point of writing every night. And I finished that book in 6 months. So it's doable.
Unfortunately, the title of your book, or most of the title of your book, I've heard all too often. Not tonight, honey.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You should have heard my daddy trying to hawk that one to the congregation.
I'm sure that was a little tricky.
It was. That's my naughtiest book.
Well, I have a naughty book as well, which even has a naughty word in the title, unfortunately.
I saw that when I was, I did a little research on you, and I saw that, and I tried to find it. So you need to send me a link where I can order that.
Oh yeah, it's available all over. But I'll send you a link after this conversation.
Perfect. Great.
I have to say the audiobook of that is fantastic.
Did you narrate it?
I did not, but I hired somebody who was, he became the character, and he was so good. He's actually a well-known voiceover artist.
Wow. I'm going to do the audio of it then.
Yeah, it's up there on Audible, but I'll send you a link after this.
Thank you.
Well, Susan, we're pretty much out of time here, and I think we've covered just about everything, except if people want to get a hold of you, Susan, where can they find you? Either website or social media or all the above?
All of the above. I love to, believe it or not, Mike, I can Zoom. I don't know what happened to my equipment today. I want to blame it on you, but I know it's my fault. I love to go to book clubs, and I have lots of swag. You know what author swag is. I have a lot of fun stuff.
Sure.
For book clubs. My website is www.susanreinhardt.com, and you spell Reinhardt REINHARDT, and all my social media stuff is under that name as well.
All right. I'll be sure to put your website as well as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram in our show notes so listeners can easily look that up.
Thank you, Mike.
And of course, the forthcoming book is the Beautiful Misfits. This interview will be out after your publication date, so I imagine it will be available wherever books are sold.
Probably, because my publication date was supposed to be yesterday, but it looks like it came out this weekend. So,
oh wow, okay.
Yes. Well, I really enjoyed that. This was a fun interview.
Well, I thought so too, Susan, but because you made it fun.
No, you did.
Well, we can both take credit.
Let's do.
Well, Susan, thank you for stopping by Uncorking a Story and letting me uncork yours.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks for listening to Uncorking a Story. If you'd like more information about today's guest or to find out more about Mike, go to uncorkingastory.com. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and review us at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Tune in every week to hear Mike Carlin uncork a new story.